Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon to all here in the room, and thank you very much for this opportunity to be able to present to you the activities of the Union for the Mediterranean Secretariat. It has become a habit, and I think a very positive tradition for me, Secretary General, to come before you, members of the European Parliament, just I come also in front of the members of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Union for the Mediterranean, to be able to present the activities and, of course, to debate on the way forward. My intention is to go through a presentation that will be then, of course, circulated through the help of the colleagues of the European Parliament and the Foreign Affairs Committee. But I think it's a good opportunity to go through the different activities of the UfM Secretariat in 2015. So the presentation is about 2015 because also it's the moment now where the activity report of the Secretariat has been just finalized. But of course, some of the issues that I will be mentioning draw their impacts and their activities over to 2016 and beyond. But basically, I would like to start by pointing out that 2015 has very clearly been a year where it has been obvious that the regional challenges call for regional solutions. And I just wanted to briefly point out to the fact that, of course, we have been witnessing in all the way through 2016 also, and rather tragically, some very important challenges on an unprecedented scale, be it, of course, refugees and illegal migration and terrorism and extremism. And this clearly has been one of the major highlights of 2015. 2015 was also a year where the European neighbourhood policy, you reminded it earlier, has been reviewed. And in this review of the ENP, clear reference and strong reference to the Union for the Mediterranean has been made, both in the paper by the EIS and the European Commission on November 18th, as well as during the EU Council on December 14th. 2015 was also a year where the UfM has been granted the observer status at the United Nations. And just to conclude with this brief description of 2015, this is a year where we had an informal meeting of the UfM Ministers of Foreign Affairs in November 26 in Barcelona, commemorating the 20th anniversary of the Barcelona process. But rather than looking back in history, it was more a meeting where we were looking towards the present and the future and the way ahead for what we can summarize as more UfM and the roadmap for the way forward. Just to remind here that the UfM methodology is policies in action, which is this triangle between the political dimension. The UfM is first and foremost a political forum. It's an intergovernmental institution gathering the representatives of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs of 43 countries, 28 from the European Union and 15 from the South and Eastern Mediterranean. It is the only forum that gathers this institutional framework, and it is first and foremost an intergovernmental forum. It is, I have to say, since we are talking about the political dimension of the UfM, it is also accompanied by a Parliamentary Assembly of the UfM, where the members of Parliament of the UfM are, of course, represented. Within this political dimension, there are many ministerial meetings that are being held, and of course, we work on the basis of a virtuous triangle in which this political dimension gives the political impetus, therefore providing the possibility for regional dialogue platforms in which a multi-stakeholder approach is then enacted in order to allow for other stakeholders to participate in our different activities. And these regional platforms then yield and allow for the identification and implementation of concrete regional projects, because we believe that any initiative within the Mediterranean has to be operationalized through regional cooperation projects. So this is why the key word is policies in action. Basically, the UfM is, as I said earlier, challenges, but it is also opportunities. Let me just mention here that, of course, we have the political challenges that we know and that we are very much aware of, be it the MEPP, the Middle East peace process, Syria, Libya, and unfortunately others. The challenges are also the lack of regional integration in the region, and the challenges are also the socio-economic root causes for extremism and illegal migration. Just let me share with you the following figure. We made a study at the UfM Secretariat in which we considered the UfM as an economic bloc. How would the trade flows be distributed within the region? The results are as follows. 90%, 90, are between the European Union countries as the main locomotive, economic locomotive in the region. 9% are between the north and the south. And 1% only is between the southern Mediterranean countries. This clearly, this very weak level of regional integration is the top priority for the UfM, because within the UfM, what we are trying to do is to foster regional cooperation and regional integration. But I would like to share with you another figure that I think is relevant for our discussion, relevant for the work that we have been conducting within the framework of the UfM, which is that the EU has a trade surplus of 49 billion euros with the southern Mediterranean countries, 49 billion euros. This clearly shows that there are challenges, but there are also at the same time opportunities. And we must build on the opportunities, because any long-standing, long-term, sustainable answer to all the challenges that we are facing lies in the consolidation and the strengthening of these opportunities. This is why we believe at the UfM that we have to work on both scales, which is dealing with the challenges but also building on the opportunities. The mandate of the Secretariat, as you know, and we are coming here to the main results and outcomes of the UfM Secretariat's activities, is to foster operational regional cooperation. We build on a positive agenda that brings together different stakeholders in the region in order to operationalize concrete regional cooperation projects. To this date, I'm happy to share with you and to report to you that we have 41 labeled projects that have been labeled by the UfM, 41 regional cooperation projects. And as you can see from the histogram, that this curve is exponential. I believe that we can do more, because with the toolbox, I'm certain that we can accelerate the pace of the labeling and the implementation of the different regional projects that we have. But these projects are built on the existing platform. We have held 19 ministerial meetings and high-level conferences, 20 senior official meetings, senior officials meeting at the level of ambassadors of the 43 member states, 130 expert forums and roundtables, gathering more than 10,000 stakeholders. The work is undergone on the basis of a variable geometry. We believe variable geometry is key for the region because it allows a pragmatic, gradual approach to the different activities and initiatives that we are undertaking. These 41 labeled projects are distributed through the different areas that are priority areas for the UfM, for the region, be it water and environment, be it higher education and research, social and civil affairs, which basically means for us women empowerment. It's a very important dimension, business development, energy and climate action, and transport and urban development. The geographical distribution of our different activities is as shown. Maghreb and Mashrek are rather dominant in our activities, but I note that we need to do more with the Western Balkans and Turkey, and this is clearly one of the decisions that we have taken in order to balance more the different activities, and clearly it stands in our 2016 and beyond action plan. But what I wanted to mention here, because I think it's important and relevant for all of you to know it, is that to this date, 50%, and in fact 54%, of our label projects are under implementation. And we keep a very close eye on this 50% implementation rate between labeling and implementation, because we want to make sure that all the activities that we are initiating have actually impacts on the ground and true consequences, positive consequences for the populations. The other thing that is worth noting here is that the different stakeholders with whom we are working are more or less 50% public and 50% private, or rather 50% public and 50% non-public, because there's a diversity in the non-public, including civil society, university, and private sector. To go more in zooming in our activities, we have three main areas of activity targeting three main political objectives. The main activities are youth employability and inclusive growth, women empowerment, and sustainable development and infrastructures, all of them going towards the main political objective. If you can just click on, thank you, the three of them, please. Thank you. The regional human development, regional stability, and regional integration. I just wanted to show this slide because it may be the most important slide in my presentation, because it puts the different activities that we are doing in line with the objectives that are political objectives of regional stability, regional integration, and regional human development. Youth is at the center of anything that we are developing within the UfM Secretariat, because we believe that youth employability, youth employment, youth empowerment is fundamental and is the long-term answer and solution to all the challenges in the region. I repeat, all the challenges in the region. Whether it's youth employment and inclusive growth or sustainable development or women empowerment, we always look at it with a main focus on youth empowerment. Our label projects today, 15 of those label projects are specifically dedicated on youth employability and inclusive growth, targeting 115,000 beneficiaries. Women empowerment, 8 projects, 58,000 beneficiaries. Sustainable development and infrastructures, 18 projects. Of course, here it's less obvious to be able to identify the number of beneficiaries because it's covering the whole area and trying to link from an infrastructure and connectivity perspective all the regions of the Euro-Mediterranean. But clearly, youth employability is a key issue for regional stability. Let me just remind here that 28% youth unemployment in the MENA region. It's very high. It's actually very high also in Europe, which makes this question of youth employability a very important question for joint cooperation, joint partnership between Europe and the South Mediterranean countries. I don't think that youth employability is a problem only in the south of the Mediterranean. I think it's a problem that has to be tackled from a partnership perspective between the north and the south, and we all know that it is central to the development of the region. But the different activities are being conducted within the framework of a policy framework, a lot of different ministerial meetings. You have a list of them, but I just wanted to mention those that are forthcoming in 2016 and 17, because we will have a UfM ministerial on labor and employment later this year in 2016, and another one in 2017 on industrial cooperation, dealing mainly with the promotion of SMEs. The UfM strategic objectives for youth employability is job creation and providing true answers to job creation and unemployment through a Euro-Mediterranean perspective, focusing mainly on vocational training, on higher education, student employability and mobility. It's very important. And of course, providing the capacity to be bridging on synergies of initiatives and institutions already working on this, in this area. I will not repeat the figures because you have already mentioned them, but 115,000 beneficiaries, and in each sector we have a number of beneficiaries that we have involved with us to become the ambassadors of the projects of the UfM, so that we really make sure that young people, for them, for those that are beneficiaries of our UfM label project, that actually this project makes a difference and that something positive happened as a direct contribution. But once we have had that, we know that our main challenge is upscaling and making the number of beneficiaries be more widely increased. Women empowerment is the second very important area, which is fundamental for the dimension of human development. And here also we have a very structured, very active women empowerment strategy that came all the way from the ministerial in 2013, September 2013 in Paris, and reaching out to the next ministerial meeting that will take place in February 2017, location still to be determined. And in the meantime, we have a yearly multi-stakeholder conference in which you are all cordially invited. It will be in October next in Barcelona, and it has proved to be a very interesting gathering of stakeholders working on the thematic of women empowerment. But we see women empowerment as an important driver for human development, for growth, for regional stability, and for the fight against extremism, for the fight against terrorism, and for the fight against illegal migration. Here also, as I said, we have 8 labeled projects with 58,000 beneficiaries. And here also we have a lot of beneficiaries that act as ambassadors for our projects, because voicing their benefit is the best way to capitalize on the possible synergies and upscale that we want to reach. The third and final dimension is the sustainable development in infrastructure, which of course is a true accelerator for regional integration. We all know that the areas of water, of environment, of transport, of urban development, and other areas related to sustainable development are fundamental for the promotion and the development of the region. And as we are in these years where we are between the COP21 in Paris and the COP22 in Morocco later on this year, and sometime in between there will be the MEDCOP in 10 years, we have a true dynamic that enables to be giving a new impulse to sustainable development as an accelerator for regional integration, specifically in the on the Mediterranean agenda. For all these thematics, the 3 thematics of youth employability, women empowerment, and sustainable development, we have always the same approach. Remember the triangle that I was mentioning earlier, the political dimension, the regional platform dimension, and the concrete project dimension. But I would like here to zoom more specifically, because I am here also in the presentation of the activity report, and I would like to report on some concrete outcomes. I would like to zoom on a project which is the depollution of the Lake Bizerte in Tunisia, which falls under the Horizon 2020 program and aims to give new socio-economic opportunities to the northern part of Tunisia, the region around the city of Bizerte, which is approximately 500,000 people, for which there will be development opportunities, and I think that such a project paves the way for the improvement of the living conditions for the surrounding population. It is a fully financed project. It is a project that is ready, and it is a project on which we are working with the Tunisian government in order to be launching it concretely, formally, probably at the end of May, just before the Ramadan break, and we hope that we will be able to do so. And here also, because I know that we have had some discussions with many members of the European Parliament, of the Parliamentary Assembly of the UfM, where the idea of inviting members of the Parliament to participate in the launch of specific UfM project has been discussed, and I intend to ask some members of Parliament, whomever might be interested, to be present with us in Tunisia for the launch of this very strategic and very important project. But we can never do whatever we are doing without a network of partners. And the name of the game is synergy. The name of the game is coordination. It's not just to have another institution called the UfM, another layer in the millefeuille of institutions that may exist around the world and specifically in our part of the world. The name of the game is really to be able to work together and to build on synergies. And this is why we are very happy with the very active partnership that we have, both with national, international organizations, governments and public agencies. Just this morning, we were in a meeting that I believe is still going on somewhere in the city about the preparation for a ministerial on cooperation with the development agencies of the different 43 countries members of the UfM. I believe this is a very important meeting that will be held on the 2nd of June in Jordan. We also obviously work with the financial institutions, international financial institutions. We have an excellent relation with the EIB, with the EBRD, and with so many other financial institutions that, of course, are either funding the different projects that we are developing or that are accompanying us in the development of these projects. Private sector is also a very important dimension. I believe that the more we have the private sector participating in the UfM activities, the more we can reach results that go beyond what we can institutionally achieve. And the private sector is truly an accelerator of regional integration as well. We work a lot with the civil society organization and representatives, and of course we have close coordination with universities and research centers. This next slide, if you allow me, is probably also one of the most important, because as much as I'm here today in front of you to be presenting the activities of the Union for the Mediterranean, as much as I would like to tell you that these promoters, these institutions, are really the ones that have the greatest contribution to building on regional cooperation in our part of the world, because they are the answers to the capacity, to what I call the scope of the possible. They are the ones who are working on a daily basis, and you see the diversity of these institutions that are both public and non-public, but building on the efforts that are already undergone by these institutions actually provides the best testimony that we must not remain hostage of immobilism, but we have to continue investing on action, on active approach for the benefit of the region. And you can see that this network of project promoters is probably the major asset for the region. I'm saying for the region, and then, of course, for the UfM. As I said earlier, we are rather well-balanced in our approach in terms of project promoters, 55% from the public sector, 44% from the private sector. Actually, it should be 56 and 44, just to make it 100%, but you have the gross figures. And my final slide would be to talk about the way forward, since I have been presenting to you the results, the outcomes, the main achievements of 2015. Let me remind here, 41 labelled projects, half of them, 22 to be precise, are under implementation. I'm very optimistic about the capacity of the others to be implemented in the near future. Funding is being sustainably achieved through our strengthened collaboration with international financial institutions, but I believe that we can be stronger. We need to be stronger in the future. This is why the main conclusion of the ministerial meeting of November 2015 was to decide for the adoption of a roadmap to strengthen the activities of the UfM in the future. And so we have started the discussion for this roadmap, and we intend to adopt it, of course, under the leadership of the co-presidencies in the next UfM Regional Forum, which will be held in November 2016, probably 23rd to 25th of November 2016. That will be another key moment for us to adopt and to enact the roadmap for the future. I believe that the magnitude of the challenges have clearly showed that the solution is in regional approach to our challenges. We cannot face the different challenges on a national base only. We need to have national mobilization, but within a framework that is a regional framework in order for the potential of the region to be unleashed, because what we want is for any solution to come from the inside the countries, inside the region, to be able to build on the opportunities, to build on the potentialities. This is the best answer for the challenges that we are facing in the region, and this is what the UfM is clearly dedicated to. I thank you for your attention.
Shukran. Thank you very much, Mr. Sijilmassi, for this comprehensive overview and outlook, and it's good to hear that out of the scheduled projects, half of them are already in the phase of implementation. We've got colleagues already who have asked for the floor. The first one is Loise Peterle. Please.
Hvala lepa, gospod predsedujoči.
Although Slovenian is a Mediterranean language, it's still hard for many of us to follow directly.
But situation has been improving, so thank you. Gospod generalni sekretar, lepa hvala za...
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General, for your presentation, which was quite detailed. Thank you as well for the ambitious goals that you've set. I'm very pleased to see that you underlined environmental issues and issues of synergy. We're all particularly interested in the basic question of how to ensure security in the region. That, of course, remains a very important issue. I'm not going to comment on the document, but I do have a question. Given that this union doesn't include just countries that border the Mediterranean, but other countries as well, which are actually continental countries, I'm wondering why Macedonia is not part of the UfM. It is, of course, strongly linked to the region, so I think there are some very good reasons that it should, in fact, be a member. So that's my question. Why is it not, in fact, a member of the UfM? And how do you think it could possibly be a member in the future? Thank you.
Madame de Sarnes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you as well to you, Mr. Secretary General. It's not the first time you've come to speak to us here today, but we're very pleased that you're here. It's always very useful. A couple of points. First, as you yourself said, the challenges have probably never been as important as they are now in this region of the world. The challenges that the countries that border the Mediterranean, economic development, poverty, terrorism, migration, war, civil war and war in general, these are the challenges, they're huge challenges. And that's my second point. Yes, we need a forum where we can speak to one another. And so from that point of view, I think it's very good that there is a forum for dialogue, this Union for the Mediterranean. And that brings me to my third point, and I have a personal comment on this. And obviously you're far better placed to know the details than I, but you were talking about the roadmap, and you talked about projects that are intended for all sectors, all categories, women, the environment, young people. All of those are, in fact, essential. And you said we have 41 regional cooperation programs that have been labeled. I think the problem is that, in fact, the UfM actually lacks identification. I think that the challenges exist. I think that the UfM is a very good tool and a good instrument, but I think that all of these instruments now need to be made use of. They need to be politicized and pushed forward. And I'm wondering if the fact that there are different projects in lots of different sectors, well, I'm wondering if the heads of state and government of member countries should perhaps establish an overall issue. So we talk about the environment, treatment of sewage, of biodiversity, of all of that. So perhaps there should be one overarching theme, something that's very easily visible and identifiable, not just by those who are lucky enough to hear you speak, but by all peoples and by all countries that border the Mediterranean. And I think perhaps we need to really think about the framework of the UfM. Thank you.
Thank you, colleague Schaffhauser.
Un Français particulier.
Well, a Frenchman who was particularly, who felt particularly strongly about the Union for the Mediterranean was here. And I have a question for you. When I look at this document, there aren't any specific figures. There's not the specific amounts. I went online on your website and it doesn't have the specific figures. Now, the second thing about these amounts has to do with what's at stake. It's estimated that 1 billion would be necessary for the development of Africa. So that's a very big number, and for the entirety of the Mediterranean it would be higher. The Silk Road, for example, it developed out of financing projects. And if you don't have funding, I mean, it's good for you because you're Secretary General, but without the funding, we're not going to get very far at all. Funding is absolutely necessary. So how do you think you'll get the significant funds necessary for development, which of course is the absolute priority? I'm convinced it's something which has never been made use of, I've said it again, is the central bank facility. I've repeated this, I'll repeat it again in the future. Every year we create between 600 and 700 billion of funding mechanisms to help banks. If that 700 billion, or even half, even 200 billion, went to developing cooperation, developing concrete projects that allows for growth both in the north and in the south, we would change the face of things. We would have more hope. Third, and this reflects what Mrs. Sarnez said, visibility. If you have two objectives, sustainable development. If you set two goals around that, well, I'm from a region in France where we see the degradation of the Mediterranean every year. I think it would then be very visible. Something that's very important for Northern Africa is agriculture and actually feeding the populations in Northern Africa. That's a fundamental issue for them. If people don't have jobs and in addition don't have anything to eat, of course that's going to lead to migration and forced migration. So there's the issue of resources, there's the issue of visibility, and there's the issue of setting two objectives which I think are absolutely essential: sustainable development and farming. Thank you.
Merci, collègue Epitideos.
Thank you, Chairman. In spite of the fact that my previous colleague, Mr. Schaffhauser, covered me to a large extent, he covered what I want to say. However, I would like to note that in order to have real progress and to give a meaning to the existence of this Mediterranean Union, the Union has to concentrate on real problems in a realistic way and not through philosophical approaches. Weight should be given to the growth and the development of the countries from which we have immigration problems. In this way, we will have growth in these countries and we will not have uncontrollable immigration flows towards the other countries of the Mediterranean, especially towards the countries of the southern Mediterranean. Another important factor. The effort should be concentrated on countries at the coasts of the Mediterranean. I heard somebody to say to include in these countries firearm. This could not happen. In this case, we should take other countries that do not have any coasts and include all the other countries and to create a union that will not have any possibility to grow, to present a development program, and therefore this union will not have any meaning to exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You will see now another non-vice president at work. I was twice foreign minister, but I'm not vice president of AFET. But I was asked by my colleague Galler to replace him for a while, but I think that one of the vice presidents is on the way to join us. So now I have the honor to give the floor to our colleague, Madam Manescu.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think it was very interesting, and we all had discussed many times about this region as facing a lot of challenges, due also to the open conflicts that we are witness in this region. We were many times have spoken about the challenges and the pressure on different countries in the region due to the refugees, and knowing that they are facing social pressure, political pressure, economic pressure. I'm referring, of course, to Lebanon, to Jordan, to all the countries in the region. I want to know if you have a holistic approach, having in mind programs, not only country by country, but programs to touch all the region in terms of job creation, in terms of economic development and business sector development, because that will involve more young people, unemployed people, and why not refugees on the labor market. As also my colleagues have asked about this holistic approach, I'm very interested to hear if you have this kind of approach or there will be soon such programs. And as well, I want to know if in terms of job creates already, if you have figures, if you know exactly how many jobs there were created through the programs, how many young people were employed, how many SMEs were created. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask our last speaker, Mr. Astrovicius, to be as short as possible because our guest has only 6 more minutes. He has to leave at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Secretary General, for your information and comprehensive analysis you presented at our meeting. First of all, some countries of the Union you represent are failing states with very little of governance and control on the ground. To what extent your Union is assisting those countries, since I saw among the partners you are the, for example, OECD, which is heavily involved in governance and better governance and activities along. Would you comment something on better governance activities in the Union? And secondly, how about the sustainability of projects the Union helps to implement, especially for countries less developed? I mean, to what extent those projects are sustainable in a long run? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Secretary General, the floor is yours again. I think you would be welcomed again among us because the questions are here and I think we all share the ambition you presented here. Please.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank the 6 members of Parliament for the questions and the observations and the analysis and their interest in the UfM and in the region. So if I just go through them very quickly one by one, but perhaps before I give some specific answers or reactions to different comments, I would like to say, and I do mean it, and we have actually done it, that all members of the European Parliament or members of the Parliamentary Assembly of the UfM that are interested to know more about the UfM activities and to interact with us are most welcome to Barcelona in our headquarters in order to be developing further exchanges and more in-depth exchanges. We have had several delegations coming to Barcelona to have this kind of discussion and to go more in-depth on the different issues. So I strongly encourage you to see us and have this exchange of view that I think could be beneficial. But let me now go to the different questions. The first one about, and it's actually the question raised by you about Macedonia, and it's true, it's not a member of the UfM. The UfM is built on the following principle. The EU is there as the EU, 28 member states. And then it's all the neighboring countries of the Mediterranean, so it's 15 South and Eastern Mediterranean countries. But what I want to say is when we start working on specific issues, on specific projects, this does not mean that we cannot work with non-UfM countries, that we are, of course, interacting on an ad hoc basis with any other stakeholder that may be of interest if, of course, the conditions are there to be able to conduct this work. This is why I think that the most important for us is to look at what we are doing from the perspective of the benefit for the region. But if we need to include any other stakeholder in dealing with this, we can do it. Let me give you an example, a concrete example. One of our most active partners in the UfM is Norway. Norway is not a member of the EU, Norway is not a member of the UfM, but Norway is a very active partner in some of the things that we are conducting. So we look at this from this very pragmatic perspective of the output and of the benefit for the region. Madame de Sarnez, je suis bien entendu très sensible à vous.
Mrs. Sarnez, appreciate your comments. I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear that I agree with your analysis. I think that when we are a citizen of the Mediterranean, we see things as they happen. What you've said is indeed the perspective that we're planning on under this roadmap, which we hope to have adopted by the end of the year. It's clear that the Union for the Mediterranean in 2016 is not the same Union for the Mediterranean from 2008. And even from one year to another, we have things imposed upon us by events. So in 2016, we find ourselves in the third phase of the Union for the Mediterranean. The first phase, 2008-2011, was implementation, including all the difficulties that I won't go over again. Then 2012-2015 were the years in which we really began working on content after the implementation phase. And we're not just talking about activities that we can implement very quickly over a 3-month period. They take a long time and a lot of energy. And I think now we are really ready to enter a third phase. And that's why I just wanted to say that I do agree with your comment, as well as the comment of our other colleague, on visibility. And that is why I mentioned the emblematic project, Bizet. And again, I'd like to repeat my invitation to you. This is an important strategic project. It's a political project as well, even though it has an environmental focus. And it's extremely important in order to help the region expand outward, a region which has a lot of possibilities for development. I think today we are at a point where we can act. And the only thing I want to underline is that, and I'm sorry, but I'm a bit involved with this, so it's more of a personal comment than official, perhaps. The Mediterranean cannot just be a Mediterranean based on discourse or on poetics. It has to be a Mediterranean based on action and taking action on the ground. I think that there are so many people and so many institutions who work under conditions on a daily basis, under conditions that are very difficult, but they get us to help us figure out what works and what will actually provide a long-term solution for the region. And I think that the three sectors that we've identified, so youth employment, women's empowerment, and sustainable development, are at the center or at the heart of our future strategy. As regards amounts, well, to the MEP that asked, I could send you the details on that, the details about our various projects. And they are sufficiently detailed that we could provide you answers as regards the amounts and when they're used, etc. And I also just want to say that the Union for the Mediterranean is not a funding organization. It's not a financial organization. So we could have a discussion about whether or not it should be a financial organization. There was a lot of discussion about the Euro-Mediterranean Development Bank. I even remember that back in 2008, when the UfM was created, there were several ideas put forward about that. But beyond that, which is an option that members could talk about, beyond that, I would just say that it's possible and important to mobilize what already exists. That is financial resources that already exist. And remember that when we talk about financial resources, the amount of spending does allow us a lot of room for financing. I mean, what we do on a daily basis for the projects that we work on for development is a lot of financial engineering, which is indeed aimed at matching up financial resources with actual implementation of projects in order to benefit not just international organizations, but to benefit the actual project promoters. And I think we'll continue to do that. In our roadmap, we've looked at the idea of creative, innovative financing mechanisms. It's a little too early to talk about that, but I'd be pleased to do so in the future. And, of course, on visibility, I think we agree. Concentrating on issues such as sustainable development and farming is important.
I agree with you, sir, when you said that we should concentrate on the reality of the projects and on the reality of the actions that have been implemented. And I think I already gave the answer to some of the questions that you have raised, and I understand why you raised them. On job creation, I think the issue that you have asked is a very important issue. We have a program, a holistic program, since you have mentioned this notion, that is called Med for Jobs, Mediterranean for Jobs. It's Med for Jobs is a framework program dedicated to job creation especially for youth. It's built on 3 pillars. The first pillar is employability. It's mainly education, vocational training to prepare young people to be better prepared to enter into the labor market. The second pillar is job intermediation. The supply and demand, there are several institutions in different member states, but they do not necessarily connect well, the supply and demand, so we are working, especially with our colleagues from GIZ, on a very interesting project on job intermediation. The third pillar is the business enabling environment, which is that youth can be something else than employed. They can actually create their own company. How can we encourage them to create startups and companies and SMEs? So these are the 3 pillars of Med for Jobs, but I would be very happy to provide you with more information. And yes, sir, we work on governance. Governance is a very crucial area because actually the true capacity to deliver on any dimension related to the needs of the populations. And just in this regard, let me give you one example that is connected to that. It's on our urban development projects or initiative, which is called the UfM, Urban Project Finance Initiative, which is a consortium of many international financial institutions. The European Commission is there, the EIB, EBRD, AFD from France, and other institutions are there under the coordination of the UfM Secretariat in order to work on urban development projects. And of course, when we talk about urban development, we talk about governance, and governance is indeed a very important issue. And I would just like to finish just by saying that OECD is a very important partner for us. We work very well with them, and I'm very happy about it. So these are just a few reactions. I'm sorry if I have not been exhaustive reaching out to everything that you have said. Again, many thanks for the invitation. Many thanks for the opportunity to be able to present to you the activities of the UfM Secretariat. But most importantly, I would like to close by reiterating the invitation to Barcelona, the invitation to the UfM Secretariat to be able to discuss further. And by the way, it's always a very sunny and nice weather in Barcelona, so you're welcome.
Shukran. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General. We will keep our attention to what you have been working there, and don't be surprised if a delegation lands soon in Barcelona. So, thank you for your rich answers.
Thank you.
I think everything was clear, and good luck.
Thank you.
That's for it.